Greetings, Stellar Seekers. I'm the Astral Arkitekt, and this is Digital Dimensions Theory, a creativity framework for digital matter theory. And this is Lesson 2, where we discuss DMT-1, the line. If this is your first exposure to digital dimensions theory, I do urge you to jump back by looking below this video in the description for Lesson 1, DMT-0, the point. We will build on what we did in DMT-0, but there is still plenty to learn if you just want to watch this video first. DMT-1, the line, is an exciting part of the process of applying digital matter theory, especially for me, because it's the experimenter's phase, it's the pioneering phase, it's the research phase to a degree as well. What do I mean by that? In DMT-1, our goal is to get clear on where we're headed. What do we want to see at the end of this project as a finished result? Is it a 3D experience? Is it a profile picture collection? Is it a digital pet, music, a game? That's up to you to decide, and we cover how to arrive at a spark in DMT-0, the point. So do check that out. So now it's time to experiment, but what must we do? Well, we'll get there in a few minutes, but first, I'd like to open with this. When they speak, I listen. And last they spoke, they said. In the grand tapestry of existence, every destination we yearn for is but a node, a beacon of light in the vast expanse. To truly understand the path that led us to this luminous point, we must first immerse ourselves in its brilliance. Stand within your destination, feel its essence, and then turn your gaze backward along the thread of time and creation. See the lines that connect this point to the origins of thought, tracing the steps that the urge laid out in the Merkle root of the universe. Each line a story, each connection a purpose, revealing how the seemingly disparate moments coalesce into the grand design of our destiny. This is a quote from one of the characters in my game's universe, the Cosmic Wanderer, which is not one being, but many different beings that show up over time to illustrate certain important points. And I think that this is worthy of an appearance from the Cosmic Wanderers, thus the little monologue there. DMT-1, the line, is at once envisioning and playing around with in your mind the end goal, the spark from DMT-0. What does it look like? What does it feel like to interact with it? What do you want people to feel when they interact with it? Is it even interactive, or is it just an expression, something that people can identify with, like a profile picture? That's up to you as the creator. I'm not here to prescribe to you what you should or should not create. But whatever you do, take a moment, observe your sparks. If you haven't already, make sure you've chosen one to focus on as we move through this lesson. And just ruminate and be in that space where you finished. It's created. What does it feel like? How did you get there? That's the next question, isn't it? In this lesson, we're going to expound a little more on what DMT-1 is, what its objectives are. Then we're going to move on to the thought experiment, the action, the surrender to the blockchain, the application of what we've learned, an example of what we've learned, and finally the tools that you can take with you from this lesson to put this stuff into action. So what do you say? We jump right in. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. First comes thought, then organization of that thought into ideas and plans. then transformation of those plans into reality. That's a quote from Napoleon Hill, author of Think and Grow Rich. It is a rather pivotal part of my past. I, in another lifetime, was in info marketing, specifically in the internet marketing industry, teaching other people how to build out sales funnels and write copy and sell their info products. And this has stuck with me over the years because my experience has taught me it's true. And so I'd like you to reflect on that for a moment. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And something I learned when I was in hypnotherapy school, I didn't finish hypnotherapy school, but I did finish as a certified hypnotist. And one of the things that they teach you is that the subconscious mind, the part of us that is responsible for a lot of our programming and our behaviors and the way we express ourselves in our reality, it does not differentiate between fantasy and reality. So take the time, please, take the time to conceive what your end goal for your spark from DMT-0 is. Visualize, play, act, or pretend. It doesn't matter. I don't know how your brain works, and I'm not here to tell you how to use your brain. So whichever of those modes works best for you, if you're a visual person and you can close your eyes and you can see your end result, then just spend some time in that space mentally and then wonder to yourself, how do I get back to the present from this? Okay? How do I get back to the beginning? How do I work backwards from this finished result to the first step? More on that in a moment. If your spark is your destination, if your spark is the place to which you are driving in this imaginary vehicle that is creation, you just need to know the path to get there, right? But what if you start at the destination? What is the road back home? And this is sort of the essence of DMT-1 the light. What we want to do is we want to take and break down our goal into its component parts, its traits. And then we want to figure out, how do we arrive at the expression of the desired traits that we want to see? And it's pretty straightforward how to do this. I will show you my method right now. But let's say you've played around with your destination, your goal, the realization of your spark, and you don't know a clear path to get there, but you know the direction to head in, right? You know that from your current location, your destination is, let's say, east of where you are. Why not set out in that direction now? Look, we're not the ones that walked the roads of Rome here. We're the ones that build the roads. We're explorers, experimenters, pioneers. We're builders. And sometimes that means you have to forge your own path. Take my project, Satoshi's Sixth Sense Tarot. I knew I wanted to experiment with what I call initial conditions. It's an advanced application of digital dimensions theory, DMT-7, where each block on the blockchain provides a different initial condition for the tarot deck. Much like how a tarot reader clears the deck to set initial conditions before their next reading, this would require 78 individual trait selections from the block data to completely set all the cards in a new order with each Bitcoin block or bitmap. There is no direct access to that many selectors using raw block data from a single data point. And for me, that was a problem. So I built a solution. I built the path to the end goal I desired. And I want you to remember this. We are so new that sometimes the tools we need, the functions we need, the architecture we need has not yet been invented. And this is an opportunity to be a pioneer. So seize upon it if you can. I'll try and help along the way. Today's thought, the experiment that should kick off the process of applying DMT-1 the line. The thought is, given my destination, my spark, how do I get here to where I am now from there, where I want to be, my realized goal? How do I get here from there? Now, some of you may think that's backwards. Some of you may say, I'm not there, so how can I possibly figure that out? Well, it's a process of deconstruction. If you know that you're building a profile picture collection, you know that whatever is depicted in that profile is most likely going to resemble a being, right? A being is composed of a face and a neck and shoulders, and it's up to you how far down the body you depict in your profile picture. Write those things down. Those are the components that make up the whole. That is the first step backwards from the whole, is it not? Is the component parts. Eyes, nose, mouth, hair, etc. With my goal in Satoshi's Tarot, I knew that I wanted to set the initial conditions and see what effect that had. That was the grand experiment I had in mind when it came to creating Satoshi's Sixth Sense Tarot. I just wanted to create a simple example that could show you how DMT-1 the line works. And so I said, okay, I'm about to get a reading from a bitmap. How does the bitmap impact the reading? And so I played with that thought for a few moments, and then I thought, well, the bitmap could shuffle the cards, and that could provide the reading. Simple as that. One data point is needed. That shuffle. That non-arbitrary shuffle that results in an actual randomization of the deck. And that is where the inspiration to create the entire web application and future inscription came from. Was what happens when? I asked myself, what happens when you want a bitmap to shuffle a deck of cards? How do you do it? How do I get here to the beginning of that project from that end result? Well, I need to break it down into the component parts. The result is a shuffled deck of tarot cards ready to perform a reading. The component parts are the 78 cards that make up a standard Rider-Waite based deck of tarot cards. Now, to get there from here, I realized with 78 cards, I'm going to have to do some tap dancing to shuffle the entire deck, to reorder each card in the deck, because the longest string you'll find in a block header is 64 characters long. It's a hash. I'm referring to the Merkle root specifically when I say this. So, with this thought, given my destination, my spark, how do I get here to the beginning of the project from there? And it's as simple as I just outlined. You start with the end goal, then you say, what came right before this deck was ready to be read? Well, I somehow found or created or evolved or derived a data point that allowed me to reorder the deck according to the initial conditions of that bitmap or Bitcoin block. The solution did not exist. I had to create one. So, soon, in a future lesson, we'll discuss that solution, which is hash synthesis. It is a deterministic way, a repeatable way, a non-arbitrary way to extend the Merkle root onto virtual infinity so that you can select as many traits as you need just using byte pairs from the Merkle root. If you're interested in learning more about how to do trait selection using the Merkle root, I've linked to one of my articles below where we discuss exactly that. And you can look forward to DMT-4 when we introduce the arrow of time to ordinals, UNATs, bitmaps, using the Merkle root and hash synthesis. Next, how do I assemble or make use of the block data that sets those initial conditions? That would be the next step backwards in time toward the beginning of the project, right? Well, I need the entire block header. How do I do that? I make an API call either to the Ordinals Recursion API or to some third-party service like Tatum or getblock.io. I happen to use getblock.io. I'll link to those two services in the description. So what actions can you take now that you know the thought experiment to engage in? Well, I think the action here is to take your spark, visualize, play act, pretend, imagine what it looks like in its finished state. Whether it's a game, a bitmap experience on a parcel, a profile picture, a digital pet, music. Step backwards until you reach your point of origin, if you can. If you can't, head in that direction. That's your action, and here's how. Identify some traits that make up your goal. Let's use the example of Satoshi's Tarot. In Satoshi's Tarot, the goal is for when the application is finished loading to have the deck in a state that is unique to that specific Bitcoin block or bitmap. That acts as the initial conditions, the reader preparing the tarot deck for the person they're about to read. And then work backwards to see how you arrived at that finished goal. If it's a profile picture, you need traits, and those traits are, and then you would list them out, and then you say, okay, how do I select the eyes for this profile picture? And you look at a block header, and you say, where is a good place, where is a good thematic fit, if nothing else, to select the eyes from? Now, because we're talking about a profile picture, and that makes me think of blue eyes, brown eyes, red eyes, let your imagination run wild. That makes me think of DNA, which again makes me think of the Merkle root. And so with the Merkle root, you can explode it into 32 byte pairs in hexadecimal format. And each of those byte pairs could be a different trait. So you could have up to 32 traits with a raw Merkle root. I can show you how to have way more than that. But for the sake of simplicity, you have 32 traits that you could assign to the Merkle root. What happens when you do that? You take each of those 32 byte pairs in a Merkle root. This is the action that you can take today. And using your spark, your goal, what are 32 different traits that could make up and create your goal? If that's too many, don't worry. Select fewer. But the action to take here is begin experimenting. Begin saying, okay, what happens when I assign the base color of this profile picture's character to the first byte pair of a Merkle root? And again, if you need help in understanding what I'm talking about there's an article below on using the Merkle root as quote-unquote DNA. I urge you to check that out. So that's the action you can take with DMT-1 the line. And what you get out of it is a trait sheet. connected to the data points that will express those traits, that will select those traits from the list of available options, right? So you could have, with the example of eyes, you could have a trait for the eye color. White, green, brown, blue, purple, pink, it doesn't matter, it's your choice. But you need to say, okay, which data point in the block header is going to select a pink eye or a red eye, all right? And I'll show you some tricks for that in the future. Now, given that my destination is a spark, how do I get here from there? Let's go to the example, Satoshi's Sixth Sense Tarot. Here is Satoshi's Sixth Sense Tarot application. I'm going to hit the refresh button, and this is going to take a second to load because it's downloading the block header along with all of the transaction data for that block. And as you can see in the top right of the screen, we're at block height 849004. So that's the bitmap that the application is going to perform a reading from, which means 849004 has shuffled the deck to be in a specific state. It has done that using an extended Merkle root. So what I did is there are 78 cards, but there's only 32 bytes in a Merkle root. So I had to extend the Merkle root twice. 32 times 2 is 64. So that's almost the whole deck, but I need 78 data points. So I extended the Merkle root a third time, and I used 78 of those byte pairs to arrange the deck in its initial condition. And then I use another technique, which is DMT related, adjacent, but not specifically DMT. However, it does incorporate block data. I wanted the person getting the reading to have influence on how the cards were interpreted. That's how it works in a real reading. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fill out an example question here, and I'm going to be quiet because I need to edit out the sound of my keyboard. Now what I've done is I've entered in a question. What is the outlook on Bitcoin over the next 30 days? And my date of birth, in this case, 1/3/2009, which is the date that Bitcoin was activated. And I'm going to click Satoshi Tell Me My Fortune. What just happened is in the background, this application created what I've deemed a soul signature. And a soul signature goes and it fetches, not from this block, but from the blockchain itself. It fetches the moment in time at which I broadcast that question out into the ether, out into the digital ether, so that I may get a reading and tell me what is the outlook on Bitcoin over the next 30 days. So we've created a soul signature from the slice of time, according to the Bitcoin blockchain, with the question that was asked, with the date of birth, in this case, the date that Bitcoin was turned on. So we take those three elements, we combine them together, and we hash them using the same technique that hashes are created on Bitcoin. It's called an SHA-256 hash, a SHA-256 hash. It's a 64-character string, just like a Merkle root. And then what we do is we use that string to determine we use the first 3 byte pairs off of that string that we just generated called the soul signature to determine how the 3 cards in this past, present, and future reading are interpreted. And so I can click here and you'll see that the interpretation is craving to be the center of attention. This is the past part of the reading. The thought is, what kind of recognition do I crave and why? And I think that this is an expression of what we as a Bitcoin community have gone through with the bear market that lasted a while. That's where we're coming from, is wanting that momentum back, wanting that number go up. I think that that's what this is referring to. And the affirmation is, I value sincere praise. And I think the praise is the invisible hand dipping into the market and pumping the number for Bitcoin, pumping its value. I think that that's the past. The present is the Knight of Bit Cups, and this interpretation is largely, I would say, a negative one. And that's how the soul signature influences the outcome of the reading. Is it determines, are we reading this card in a positive or a negative light? And then it also selects which actual interpretation gets chosen. And that's all done using DMT. It's done by chopping off, say, the second byte pair in this case, because we're on the present card. And that second byte pair might be below 50% out of when divided against the total of the max value of a byte pair, which is 256. So if we divide the actual value by 256, we might get 30%. And so it would choose a shadow interpretation or a dark or negative interpretation. And then the interpretation array in the data set for Satoshi's Tarot contains like anywhere from 3 to 5 different possible interpretations. So we can say, using that same percentage, let's say it's 30%, and there are 10 entries in the interpretations array, we would select the third entry in the array as the interpretation. That's how DMT was used to fashion and interpret these readings, by using the influence of the soul signature against the possible options represented by the tarot card data set. I hope that that wasn't too hairy an explanation. Yeah. Let's go back to the presentation. And move on to the tools. The tools today are very simple. It's a block explorer that I coded in like 30 minutes, but it has its purpose. Let me show you its purpose. I want you to take and envision your spark, okay? And while you're envisioning your spark, I want you to pull up any Bitcoin block, any bitmap, however you think of it. I want you to type that number in here. We're going to go to my first bitmap, 662023. Its symbolic importance to me is it is the date that my company was officially licensed as an LLC. So here we've got bitmap number 662023's data in front of us. Over on the right, we have the transaction hashes for this entire Bitcoin block. On the left, we have the block header. You'll notice there is a bits field there. That bits field is currently represented only as an integer, but I'll have a new version by the time you watch this video that includes both the integer version of the bits field and the hexadecimal version of the bits field. And you'll also find that these are no longer truncated. This is an abbreviated visualization of the chain work data point. And well, that is not useful to you as a DMT researcher. So I will fix that before we watch this, before you watch this video. And what I want you to do is I want you to start breaking down your end goal into a collection of traits. Whether we're talking an interactive galaxy like my NAT galaxies, a piece of music, what are the traits that make that up? Okay? And then I want you to scan through this page on the left column, and I want you to say, what can I use? What can I use to select these traits? Now, if I had my way, you'd use the Merkle root every time, just because it's so straightforward, especially once you get into hash synthesis, which is a deterministic way of extending the length of the Merkle root to suit your needs, so that if you need 128 traits, guess what? I can show you how to generate 128 traits using the Merkle root deterministically, so that every time you load that block of data, all 128 traits are expressed the same way. Keep an eye out for DMT-4. So Explora here is the tool, and it will be linked in the description. Start drawing dotted lines from your traits to the names of these fields. Specifically, patterns that you see within these fields, right? So at the top of Explorer right now, we're looking at 662023, and we might notice that it would be cool, since we're talking about time, if the hair was expressed by the last 4 digits or the last 3 digits of the median time. Like that would be like, over time, what color is the hair? Well, it's largely red, or it's largely gray, or it's largely green. Like that could be expressed by the last 4 digits, just as an example of the median time, or last 2, or it's your choice. But look for patterns in the data that are thematic is another point I'd like to make. If it's thematic to what you're building, you'll lean in that much harder into this part, because some people might find pattern matching for traits tedious. And I don't want it to feel that way. I want you to feel like you're gaining momentum as you work through this exercise. So, it has been a few minutes. I've talked a lot, and I hopefully have taught you a lot. I promise this will serve you well as you move forward in your creative endeavors with digital matter theory. And I'd like to leave you with this thought. Whether you're building for bitmap, you're building a UNAT, or just a regular old recursive ordinal, digital matter theory can be applied. And if the authors or other people tell you otherwise, just remember old Astral teaches something called digital dimensions theory. And in digital dimensions theory, it all applies. It can all work together in harmony. I would love to see a future where bitmaps are rife with resources that are discovered through the application of digital matter theory. And I would love to see a future where digital dimensions theory allows you to express that in multiple dimensions. I don't know if that's the path that we're on collectively, but wouldn't it be cool if it was? I hope you enjoyed this lesson. There are many more to come, many shorter ones, I hope. This has been Digital Dimensions Theory Lesson 2, DMT-1, The Line. Do stay tuned. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have Lesson 3, DMT-2, The Plane, where we begin actually mapping and finalizing our traits and creating real art. We'll see you soon. Always be building.